Hi, sweeties. How are you doing? Welcome to Naya Sim. Thank you so much for the support. Hope you all are doing great. Black people, with the things that I am seeing online, and there are some things that I don't actually bring here. I see them and move past them because some of them are very triggering, right? The best I can tell my own people is to continue to be woke because this 2025, you are actually in a war zone. And I am sure you know what I am saying because it is really getting so bad day by day. So this woman came back, her child came back from school and she took the book. I think this happened in Texas, the book that they gave the child in school. You really need to see the kind of book, the way they are whitewashing African American history, Black history. Now, these were also the same people that came out to say that slavery was better than being unalive. And I am sure you all remember when they came out to bring this, I mean, it was their own propaganda that they came out to say that slavery was beneficial to slaves. And I am going to say this. Make sure that your child is not watching anything from PragerU, or if you see any book from school that is from Prager University, tear it apart because those people are pushing disgusting agenda to people about my own people. It is very disgusting from the bottom of my heart. I am saying that it is really very disgusting that in 2025, some people do not want you to leave. Let's get into
from a book today from her Texas public school library entitled African Americans in the Colonies. Let me hit you with some highlights. The first Black people in Jamestown were a group of Africans from Barbados. They were brought there by Dutch traders, and Englishman John Rolfe bought them. The Blacks probably spoke English, and like English indentured servants, might have eventually earned their freedom. Antonio, a Negro, arrived in Jamestown in 1621. He was owned by the Bennett family, who praised his hard work and loyalty. Antonio married a Black woman named Mary, eventually earned his and his family's freedom. He became a landowner and changed his name to Anthony Johnson. In the early days of Jamestown, settlers didn't use words like white or black to describe themselves. They would refer themselves or each other as English, Christian, or perhaps servants who could be either white or black. Anthony Johnson enjoyed the same rights, freedom, and respect as any white servant who became successful by working hard. But as tobacco farms became bigger, the need for laborers grew, and the amount of English people willing to come to America as indentured servants was shrinking. So they turned to slavery. Slavery was not new to the people from Africa, where warring tribes often turned prisoners into slaves. In Africa, slaves lived and worked with the family who owned them. Slaves were considered unequal, but they were treated like other family members. This is similar to the experiences of early slaves in America, who worked alongside their white owners and probably slept in the same house. The first Africans in North America spent time among the Europeans. They could speak English and often converted to Christianity. They sometimes won their freedoms by claiming that as Christians they deserved it, or they bought their freedom with the money they earned in their free time. By the mid-1600s, 1 in 5 Black people in North America was free. But then the laws regarding slavery became stricter. African slaves entered Carolina the same way as the other colonies from the West Indies. They usually spoke English and they enjoyed some privileges in their life of hard work, but these privileges did not last long in Carolina. These farms gave way to plantations, and slaves were brought directly from Africa to the busy slave ports of Charlestown and the Chesapeake Bay. As the Black population of the colonies grew, white lawmakers made it harder for Africans to prosper. Once, a slave like Anthony Johnson could earn his freedom and live a good life if he worked hard. Now, the land he knew was vanishing. Now, Africans like John Punch were seen just as one way, permanent slaves, property of their owners. This chapter is called Recreating Africa in America. That's how we're describing slavery. We're just recreating Africa because, as you know, 11-year-old Odula Equino was kidnapped from their African home by Black slave traders. He was heartbroken when he was separated, and he was eventually sold to some white slave traders, where he saw white slave traders for the first time. Life was difficult for slaves who came directly from Africa because they didn't speak English. They worked long hours. They had few chances to learn other skills besides farming. White people, especially in the South, became more fearful of Africans as their numbers grew. Whites used fear and sometimes severe punishment to control Black slaves. Conditions slowly began to improve as the next generation of slaves demanded more rights. Family life was important to the Africans. The white slave owners learned that keeping families together meant fewer slaves would run away. Slaves wanted more free time. For a while, plantation slaves worked 7 days a week. Then they were given Sundays, the traditional day of rest, off from work. Slaves again began growing vegetables or raising chickens to sell and hired themselves out to non-slave owners after finishing their plantation work. By earning extra money, slave parents could improve the way their families ate and lived. If you're worried about the black boy we read about a moment ago with the black slave traders, don't worry. He grew tall and strong, and after a long, hard day's work, he worked even more to save money to purchase his freedom. When one of his owners abused him, he complained to the Connecticut Justice of the Peace. The man apologized, but said in his defense there were no laws to protect slaves. Finally, at age 36, he bought his freedom from his master. Slave owners often lived in fear of rebellions or uprising against them. And then they talk about one that happened where a band of 20 slaves led by a man named Jemmy left their owners and headed south, where they killed more than 20 white people that day. The cause of liberty inspired many white Americans to think harder about the morality of slavery. Many decided that human beings owning other human beings was wrong. Thousands of Africans were freed by their owners after the war ended. Even George Washington freed his slaves. At the end of the 1700s, the northern states were abolishing slavery. Some southern states made it easier for slave owners to free their slaves. It would take the long and bloody Civil War to completely abolish slavery in the United States, and that is the end. So
it's statements like these
Being taken as a slave is better than being killed, no?
that reveal to me how people don't fully understand how atrocious and horrendous American chattel slavery was. They used to eat people. And if that one fact made you feel some type of way, it was heavy for you, and it disturbed you, understand that that one fact just scratches the surface of the atrocities that took place during American chattel slavery, which makes American chattel slavery one of the worst things in human history. And if that's hard for you to understand, hard for you to grasp and believe, I need you to know that there are things that happened during American chattel slavery that have been deliberately omitted from teachings in history because of how terrible it was, because of how disgusting it was, because of how inhumane it was. There's a reason they said to bury them in the ocean with their ancestors who jumped from the ships because they knew death was better than bondage. There's a reason that history is being erased. It's because of how atrocious this was. And when you know history and you see people come forth and say, oh, well, slavery existed in other places, or they'll come forth and say it wasn't that bad or it's no big deal because it's a thing of the times. When people come forth and try to diminish that and diminish what happened, it's deliberate. And they clearly don't know history to understand that American chattel slavery specifically was so cruel and so inhumane that they had to erase it from history books. Do you understand? And I will refrain from giving all of the details of what I know about the history of American chattel slavery because I feel like that would be really heavy for you as the viewer, as the listener. But if you are someone who believes that, oh yeah, slavery was bad, it's not a good part of American history. If you are someone who believes that, and not that American chattel slavery was one of the worst things in human history, then you do not know the history of American chattel slavery. Every atrocity you can think of happened during American chattel slavery. Even the ones you can't think of happened. This is not up for debate. It's not a joke. And you have this new type of curriculum aimed at teaching students that slavery taught enslaved people good trade tactics and skills, that it was no big deal, it had its benefits. Do you understand that the fact that people can even do that, the fact that they thought it okay to write a line like that in this commercial or ad or show, whatever this was, they thought it okay to write a line that said, well, being taken as a slave is better than being killed? No. Do you understand that to write that line reveals your ignorance and how you do not understand what happened during American chattel slavery? It is baffling to me, as someone who studies history, how people think it okay to do this. When you know what really happened, you will not be able to stomach the narratives of forget about slavery. All you have to do is bring up slavery. Stop talking about slavery. Those narratives that you have become commonplace and normalized to use in conversations about reparations or America's history. When you have people who say those things, it's because they don't know how bad it was, truly. Words can't describe how terrible it was. Truly. Truly. Words cannot even begin to capture the, disgustingly inhumane things that were done to enslaved people during that time. Words cannot begin to capture how American chattel slavery was a different type of slavery. And if you don't understand that also, then again, you do not know history.
I swear, the quest to rewrite American history in order to protect white fragility is in full swing with Trump and his allies. Today, a reporter asked him about some of the changes that have been made to water down history at the Smithsonian, and of course, Trump's response, it wasn't about accuracy or education, it was about making sure history is fair, which in MAGA speak usually means scrubbing away anything that makes white Americans uncomfortable. Because apparently, the biggest threat to this country isn't poverty, healthcare costs, or gun violence, it's history books and museum plaques that tell the truth. So let's hear it straight from him. Here's Trump explaining how fair history apparently means watering down the truth and turning museums into comfort zones for white grievance. So here's what's going on. Trump just told reporters he wants history in our museums to be fair and not woke. That's Trump's latest euphemism for stripping out anything that makes white people uncomfortable. But let's pause for a second. Fair history? When anyone says fair, they usually mean whitewashing. Case in point, the White House has ordered an internal review of 8 major Smithsonian museums, including the African American History Museum and the National Museum of American History, to remove divisive narratives and improper ideology and make exhibits more in line with American exceptionalism. This is not about accuracy. It's about comfort. Institutions that preserve the full scope of American history are now being told to sanitize painful truths. And if that weren't enough, the administration may be replacing PBS, a long-standing public broadcasting institution, with PragerU. Yes, PragerU, the conservative video platform that once released a cartoon with Christopher Columbus saying slavery was no big deal and that being a slave is better than being killed. That's not education, that's propaganda. So here's what we've got. Trump wants museums to tell a comfortable story and wants to seed that same comfort with children via PragerU videos. What's truly dangerous is not an exhibit about slavery, it's flipping the script so that you're told you should feel okay with it. It's not about teaching history, it's about making certain people feel good about it. This is fucking disturbing.
Slavery is as old as time, and it's taken place in every corner of the world, even amongst the people I just left. Being taken as a slave is better than being killed, no? Before you judge, you must ask yourself, what did the culture and society at the time treat as no big deal?
It doesn't matter what the culture and society at the time treated as no big deal. The slave owners assaulted their slaves, emotionally, sexually, and physically, all the time. They knew those things were wrong. They did them out of greed and pure evil. And let's be real, the whole everyone was doing it back then argument is just a lazy way to excuse atrocities. Not everyone was doing it. There were abolitionists. There were enslaved people constantly fighting for freedom. There were communities that rejected slavery entirely. The idea that Columbus or any other colonizer somehow gets a moral pass because it was normal is a dangerous lie. We don't excuse murderers because other murders happened that year. We don't excuse theft because other people were stealing. Wrong is wrong, whether it happened yesterday or 500 years ago. And the truth is, when you start downplaying slavery, you're not just distorting history, you're telling the descendants.
Being taken as a slave is better than being killed, no? let's discuss all the ways in which that sentence is contextually wrong, historically inaccurate, and extremely and deeply harmful. When you say something like being taken as a slave is better than being unalived, you are completely ignoring how the human experience works. Slavery is in fact not better than death. In fact, death is better than bondage, which is the exact reason why so many Africans jumped to their deaths on those ships in the middle of the Atlantic. Slavery was not just forced labor, and that is what this sentence minimizes slavery down to. They were just made to work real hard. It wasn't that bad. Slavery was also sexual assault, family separation, dehumanization, psychological torture, and physical abuse, like brutal abuse. And saying that it was better than death ignores all of that. If we want to be real about it, slavery was a death sentence in slow motion. It was a literal path to a living death. No autonomy, no culture, no family, no status in society or as human. For decades, that sentence is a white supremacist narrative and was the exact same reasoning used to justify slavery. It's not that bad, at least they're alive. That is a tool of oppression. Not only is that sentence minimizing the severity and brutality of slavery in America, it's completely invalidating Black pain, saying that survival under oppression is acceptable, which inherently denies our right to freedom, dignity, and a life without enslavement. This sentence is trying to normalize the thinking that oppression and subjugation and dehumanization and exploitation are acceptable for the trade-off of life. At least you're alive. Slavery was not a better option than death. Slavery was a slow, brutal, and generational erasure of our very humanity. That sentence is not just ignorant, it is extremely harmful. And this is what they want to replace PBS. This is what they want to be shown in schools. If you have children that go to public school, I'm telling you right now, I don't care if they're 10, 18, 17, 2, you need to be teaching them the truth from day one. Because these people trying to push that type of propaganda are going to do everything in their power to make sure to minimize the truth in history and to eliminate the context. We have to fight back.
Being taken as a slave is better than being killed, no? I don't see the problem.
That's educational programming for kids from unaccredited conservative nonprofit PragerU, which is partnering with the White House right after deep funding cuts to PBS. Already, PragerU videos are approved for use in classrooms across several states, though most districts haven't implemented them, likely because the lessons are widely criticized for being factually inaccurate. The material promotes a whitewashed history that minimizes and justifies slavery, pushes anti-LGBTQ+ and anti-diversity messaging, denies climate change, and is filled with misinformation and propaganda favoring right-wing ideology. But that makes sense since PragerU was founded by suspected white supremacist Dennis Prager, who complained about not being able to say the N-word in 2020. This is an example of their propaganda, which teaches that abolitionist and former enslaved person Frederick Douglass would have agreed with America's choice to prioritize white supremacy over ending slavery.
I'm certainly not okay with slavery, but the Founding Fathers made a compromise to achieve something great.
In June, the White House introduced PragerU as a new educational partner during the launch of its Founders Museum exhibit, where the org presented the nation's origin story. In one video at the exhibit, an AI John Adams borrowed Ben Shapiro's famous phrase,
"Facts do not care about our feelings,"
which is ironic since conservatives have a lot of big feelings about facts. That's why they're trying to hide them. We don't know exactly what this partnership will look like, but the right accuses the left of indoctrinating students to justify their actual indoctrination, which is really nationalist mythology with no basis in truth.
Being taken as a slave is better than being killed, no?
We were taught, give me liberty or give me death. Live free or die. And you think we're going to fall for it?
Got from this video, and I am sure majority of you have been saying what the propaganda the Republican they have been pushing. And the truth is that this did not actually start today. This has always been there, right? Just that they gain power and they became more powerful. Not really powerful because, man, if this is the kind of power you are looking for, you are actually powerless. If the power you are looking for is the power to make people look less of themselves, you do not have that power. Is useless. Because if I have power today, I definitely will try as much as I can to make impact with the power that I have, not to make people's life horrible. Now, I am sure majority of you may have been seeing videos circulating around. I posted that on the other channel, like a little clip of it, but I didn't go into detail, right? Where they were talking about being slave is better than being unalive. And I read comments from that video. Somebody was saying, I would rather be unalive. Like, why would I want to be slave again? Just unalive me. That is how bad. People do not understand how horrible slavery was. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know. Like, since last month, since after my mom's burial, I don't know what happened. My voice has really been so bad. Bear with me. Now, really, I just cannot stand Republicans because I'm sorry I'm digressing, but I will come back. During Joe Biden's tenure, they did all they could. I mean, they were all around, all over to spread false narrative. There is nothing they did not spread. PragerU University, that university, I do not actually know who made it a university because that man teaching is disgusting, and that is the man Candace Owen worked for. They've been trying so hard to make it look like slavery was something that happened naturally or something that they did not know that was happening. But you and I knew that you all bought people, had plantations, you all came down, took people over. Right? Like, how do you want to erase somebody's history? Because at this point, it is screaming, I want to erase your history. I do not want it to know about your history. Why? Because it is not vital. And so far, they are really working so hard to fine-tune it. But how do you want to fine-tune somebody's struggle? Thank goodness, Black people are not the kind of people that keeps quiet. No, they haven't been keeping quiet about their problems, about what they went through. You and I know slavery was the worst thing that happened to people that look like me. That was a very disgusting, because slavery just did not only happen. There were other things that followed slavery. Jim Crow and the rest of them. Vagrant's law, Lake Lanier, it was just an atrocious event. And nobody should look for a way to fine-tune it, because it is you trying to tell me that my pains are not important. It is you trying to silence my pains. It is you trying to let me know that whatever happened to you did not happen. You probably did not see. Let me tell you something. There are so many people that I know on this app that their grandparents were slaves. And when you hear them tell their story, and I also saw a woman, I think, she also experienced slavery. And also was a black town, one of these popular black town that they said it was rioting, but you and I know it was not. There were survivors too that were telling their experiences, that they refused to pay them what they are supposed to get from that. Sometimes people do not understand. People do not understand how some people's generational wealth were cut off. It was from this. So when Black people talk about sorry, I am talking about, yes, it is also slavery that will bring reparations. So I need to talk about it too. So when Black people talk about reparations, they know what they are saying. And it is also time for that reparations to be given to them. Some people might think it's all about slavery. It's beyond slavery and other things, the events that happened even after slavery. These people that will tell you that we have freed the slave, and then look for a way to cut them back to the plantation. Some people will tell you, oh, it's all over, but go to the prison system. Then you will understand what I am saying. It's disgusting. And sincerely speaking, there are some things I see that they speak or talk in 2025. I just feel like I do not have hope. I don't know. Maybe I am hopeless but I understand what I am saying. Because if what people experienced back in the day, like how many decades away, and some human beings that are presently in 2025 are looking for a way to bring back some certain things today, that means some people are very disgusting and they will never change. That's why each time I talk about in 2025 and you are thinking of bringing back some certain things, that means you do not have morals. And sincerely speaking, majority of them do not have morals. I am going to draw the curtain here, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye for now.